Can't hear you. You're muted. Now I hear you.
This is Hanney Critical Faculty. Hello, everyone. Sorry we had a slight technical difficulty with YouTube, but I'm very, very honored to be speaking today with David Silverman. How are you, David?
I'm fine, Hanney. Thanks for having me on the show. It's good to be here.
Thank you very much.
Happy weekend.
Yeah. Well, Melbourne, we are in lockdown, so we don't have much of a weekend anymore. We've got curfew and all sort of things.
Wow. I mean, I've been to Melbourne. I'd love to come back, but it's so weird that parts of this world, and we're still in lockdown. I was talking to some people in China a couple of weeks ago, and they're completely off lockdown. They're in pre-COVID status, and here we are. Here we are in America, and Melbourne's locked down too. I didn't know that. How bad is it down there?
Oh, we're in stage 4, sort of had it slowed down last week, and we're heading in the right direction. But just to give you an idea, the reason why we're locked down is because we have double digits. And when I say double digits infections, we're talking about 15 a day. So this is how rigid and strict the country is.
15 a day.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at in the state of Florida, here in the States, the state of Florida just released all its restrictions. They just said, fuck it.
Yeah.
They just said, fuck it. And they lifted all the restrictions. I don't know what's going on here, Hanney. We are being fed so much self-defeating information and contradictory information. It seems to me like this, it's just political now. Yeah. It's just a matter of the political parties vying for each other. I mean, I don't know what it's like there, but here in the States, it really feels like the COVID issue is just a political issue. And it feels like the shutdowns, which are, as the president says, happening only in the Democratic states for the most part. I don't know. I don't know if they're, I mean, I'm sure they were well meant at first, but I don't know if they still are. I don't know if this is still a thing. I'm still obeying the rules. I'm still wearing my mask. But I'm getting more and more pissed off that the gyms are closed. I'm getting more and more pissed off that I can't have my life. And I'm starting to resent the people that have comorbidities that are out and about and doing their lives normally, so that, I mean, they can do their lives. But if they have comorbidities, if they're old, if they have multiple infirmities rather, shouldn't they be the ones that are isolating themselves, and we should go out and have our lives just like the flu, just like every other disease? I'm looking at this. I'm seeing 15 people in Melbourne, and the city is shut down. But the city is shut down so that the people with lots of comorbidities won't be exposed.
Mm-hmm.
But if the people with lots of comorbidities would just isolate themselves, the rest of Melbourne can have its life.
You would think so. You would think so, yeah. The problem, David, I think, and this runs deep in the nature of humans, you know, it starts with pure information, and then we take this information and say, all right, how can we use this now to achieve more with it? And what starts purely as information that you can do something about, it's taken by politicians and then manipulated maybe to do something else with. So maybe that's the case.
I mean, the big kicker for me, one of the big kickers for me is the hypocrisy that's happening here, which is everybody stay inside and wear your mask unless you're going out to a protest or a riot. If you're going out to a protest or a riot, then being in close proximity with other people is fine, and you're not spreading the disease. And the people who are going to get the disease that you're not spreading are going to die, but it's all right because you're doing it for a good cause, which is the end of white supremacy, which isn't a real problem in this country, the end of police brutality, which isn't going to be helped at all with these protests, and of course the erasure of systemic racism, which is pretty much a myth. So I'm looking at these protests. Here in Portland, Oregon, they had 100 days of protests. 100 days. How much are they giving? How much crap are they giving people who, like have these political rallies? They give Trump political rally. They give Trump grief for having political rallies, and then they have rallies and riots every night. And I'm just thinking that this is just political now. And the politicians, the reason I'm saying this is the politicians are right on board. They're doing the same thing. So, I mean, either this disease is going to spread or it's not. And it doesn't matter if it agrees with your politics or not. Either people are going to die or they're not. And it doesn't matter if they agree with your politics or not. I don't want to die for the case of Black Lives Matter. But if COVID is really as dangerous as it's happening, as they say, people are going to die for Black Lives Matter, not even going to those protests because they're going to spread that disease. They're going to catch it and they're going to die.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, that's not really a thing.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I am no expert on diseases. I'm no expert on this area, I'm just looking at the way people are behaving and looking at the way the politicians are behaving. And I'm thinking something's fishy. Something does not fit. And I'm beginning to get less and less interested in being afraid of COVID. I really am. Yeah. I think if we've got a 99.7% survival rate, and the only people who are dying are the people with comorbidities. I think it's on the people with comorbidities and the people with ties to people with comorbidities, and not on the people without, like me, to stop this disease.
Yeah, and just to be clear, David, we're not talking here about the origination of the disease. You obviously think it's a real thing. It's the handling of it, the handling of the crisis.
Yeah. COVID is a real thing. I mean, let's not get crazy here. I'm just not thinking that it's dangerous enough to warrant shutting down the countries anymore. Yes. I just don't think it is. And I could be wrong. I could be completely, but I'm not thinking that we're doing this right. I'm thinking the right way to do this is to take the vulnerable population, isolate them, and let the rest of us have our lives.
Right.
Build up herd immunity.
Yeah. Well, Sweden has done that, I believe. A couple of countries have done that.
I'm not up to date. So how's things going in Sweden with that?
Well, Sweden had a really bad run, and then eventually things were sort of reached an equilibrium, and they're sort of living with it. But the real model country that done a magnificent job was New Zealand. So New Zealand have just gone hard from the get-go, locked down from the very, very early stages. And within a month, the country was disease-free, and they can just resume life normally. It's those
until disease gets in there.
Yeah. It's those kind of countries that were not quite sure and they were reluctant for a while. They didn't make any decisions, and then they're sort of struggling right now. You made a decision early on, like New Zealand. I think you'd be laughing by now.
Well, except for Sweden made the decision not to do anything.
Correct.
And how many people have died in Sweden? I'm asking. I don't know. I'm actually unaware here. How many people have died in Sweden, as opposed to, and have they been healthy people, or have they been only people with comorbidities?
Right. Well, I've got a moderator here, Mike. If you can please do the search. I believe Sweden has got it all right in the beginning, but nowhere near, for example, the likes of Spain and Italy early on. So probably tells you that even with the herd immunity and do nothing about it, you probably reach the same point of countries who've done very little about it. So maybe if Dr. Mike can have a Google and tell us the numbers. But you are sitting on the fence on this one here. You'd want more data to come in. You're not quite sure. You think things could be a little bit manipulated to suit certain agendas. It's a possibility, isn't it?
I think it's a likelihood that it's happening to some degree.
Yeah.
I think. It certainly is happening from the right to the left, right? Trump is saying liberate Michigan, liberate all these people. He's saying don't wear masks when, and he just got COVID, by the way. I don't know if you know this. Trump was just diagnosed with COVID. Trump and Melania both. He is the one who politicized it. And then on the left, I think they just responded. I think all the left is doing is saying no to whatever Trump does. Like when COVID came out, Trump said, Trump stopped the travel to China, and the left booed and hissed. And now they're saying he's not doing enough to stop the travel. So I think they're just being negative. What's the word I'm looking for? Combative. Maybe it's combative. So I think the left is using. I think they're both using it. And that's why I don't trust them. Now I have, for lack of a better word, made headlines recently. Lack of a better word, made news, made hubbub on Twitter is really a thing, because I'm an undecided voter. It's the first time I've ever been an undecided voter. And I'm an undecided voter, but I haven't changed my ideals. I'm pro separation of church and state. I'm pro choice. I'm pro death with dignity. These are liberal ideas. And then I'm thinking about actually voting for a man who I think is a buffoon and a bad leader, and against all those ideals, because he stands up for due process and freedom of speech and separation of church and state and cops. Well, not separation of church and state, but cops. And I mean, let me tell you what's happening, Hanney. I lived in Seattle for 2 years, and I watched the city decline. But really, what's really disturbing me is this this bait and switch that's happening from the left on the issue of defunding the police. The left says defunding the police means we're going to take the money from the police and redirect it to other places which can do the job of the police that the police are doing now. And you think about that and you're like, oh, well, that doesn't sound so unreasonable, right? Sounds a little stupid if you're going to send some unarmed person to a dangerous situation. But okay, you can think of certain areas where a cop really isn't needed. Okay, that's a great theory. And that is what the left is telling us. But that is not what's happening. And in the city of Seattle right now, in order to cure systemic racism, in order to help the racism problem with the racism and all the racism, they're just cutting the cops. They're just taking 100 people off the force. They're not replacing them with any people. They're not adding people on. They're cutting the budget and taking out the cops. And this is in a city where crime is way the fuck up. And people are going to die from this. And these are really, really misguided super leftists who think cops equals racism, who thinks cops equals bad, because cops are arresting black people. And the only reason cops would arrest black people is if they're racist, not if there's a crime issue in the African-American community, which there is a huge one, a massive one. Here in America, the African-American community is rampantly more criminal in the poor sections than everyone else. They're rampantly more criminal than poor whites and poor Latinos. And that's not a symptom of white oppression, right? That's not a symptom of racism. That's their culture, and they need to deal with it. But instead of doing that, they're just blaming everything on racism. And now that mentality is causing them to cut cops. But they claim that they're going to do it right, but then they don't. And here's the thing, Hanney. I want to make sure that this point gets across. They say they're going to do it correctly, but then they don't. And what happened in Seattle? And this is why I'm thinking of voting red. What happened in Seattle was the far leftist in the city council decided this asinine idea was to help racism, was to just cut cops without anything going back, without any sort of structure, without any sort of just cut. And then the mayor, who is a leftist, who is a progressive, said, no, wait a minute, that's too much. And she vetoed the council. The leftist mayor vetoed the leftist council for being too leftist. And then the leftist council overruled the veto. And now they're going to fire the cops without any sort of replacement, without any sort of plan, in the face of increasing funds, because cops are racist. Cops equals racism. And quite frankly, Hanney, I'm terrified for that, because I'm a humanist. I'm my own brand of humanist. And I believe that innocent lives matter. I believe that innocent lives matter more than guilty lives. Yeah. I believe that criminal lives matter less. I believe that felons matter less. I believe that if we have a whole bunch of people committing crime and they're dying in the act of committing crimes, I care much less about that than I care about the children who are being put in their cribs and getting shot by street gangs. I care much more about those kids. I care much more about the little girl who was in the car at Wendy's with her mom and she got shot by the BLM protesters, by the rioters. And I think that it's humanism to say this. I think it's humanism to say kids and innocents up here, the dregs of the earth who are multiple felons shooting people, are down here. Doesn't matter what color you are. If you're a shit person, if you're acting like a piece of shit, you should stop acting like a piece of shit. And if you don't stop acting like a piece of shit, well, as Devin Tracy put it, when you're acting like a piece of shit, you forfeit your right to have me care about you as much. And if you're an innocent, I care about you a lot, because innocent people rock. Innocent people are the lifeblood of this world. And criminals can fuck themselves. That's simple stuff. But I believe that the way Black Lives Matter is going and the way these protests are going, this isn't about Black lives. This is about Black criminals. This is about protecting those criminals.
Yeah.
I couldn't care less. I mean, I really don't care. I mean, I know it's not humanistic to say that, but I don't care if criminals get, I don't care. Not nearly as much. Not nearly as much as an innocent. And I don't think anybody should. I think we should collectively as a country stop caring as much about criminals. I mean, I was listening to Officer Tatum and Candace Owens and Anthony DeBrian Logan talk about those coming home from prison parties that are common in the African-American community and in no other community. And they say, and the leftists say, oh, no, those are about coming back home from prison. It's about reunifying the family. That's horseshit. It's not. It's about victory over the police. It's about victory over the system. It's about the Asians and Jews and Latinos and whites. They all have prisoners, and they all come home from prison, and they all want to be together. And none of them have parties celebrating a convict's return home. And as I'm listening to these people talk about this, and I'm realizing that Black Lives Matter is I mean, there's huge murals of George Floyd, a multiple criminal and Cap's absolute loser, on the wall because he's a hero now. Jacob Blake was arrested 30 times, and he met with Kamala Harris. He was arrested 30 times, 30, Hanney. How do you even do that?
David, people in the comments are obviously sort of trying to wonder where are we going with this in terms of the conversation. But just to explain to people very quickly, we are talking about 3 different topics today, but they're all interlinked. So atheism is going to come because they want to hear your opinions, David, but on atheism. But obviously,
I'm ranting about this, and the problem with me, Hanney, is if you get me started, I'll just keep going. I'll just keep going. So if you want me to talk about something, you better redirect because I'll talk about it.
But let's dive just a little bit deeper there, because we talked about we're going to talk about political correctness, and obviously people are asking, this is not about political correctness. Of course we are going to try to speak against it, because it's counterproductive. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't advance you. It's a lie. It's a white lie to make people feel good about things that are not real. Just to give you a little bit of a background, I used to be slightly leaning left, like we all good atheist people, humanists. You naturally lean a little bit left. But
Sure.
we've all watched Christopher Hitchens, going from almost far left, never really made it to the far right, but rekindled a relationship with the right, and started to look at, I cannot myself right now belong to either parties, because I now cannot group my ideas in one area. I have to make decisions on every single incident given the information. I don't have a blanket ideas about how we should do something. So therefore, I don't think I'll ever be right or left anymore. I've got to be, tell me what is that you're talking about, and I'll tell you my opinion, sort of thing. Are you getting to that point?
Yeah. I mean, I can't call myself. I certainly can't call myself left anymore, right? I mean, with what happened, I mean, I can't call myself left anymore. I have allegiance, and this is really getting to what you were saying. I have allegiance to my principles. I have allegiance to the idea that we have a duty to increase good and reduce bad, increase pleasure and happiness, and reduce evil and reduce suffering. That, I believe, is about as objective good as we can get, the reduction of suffering. And I think we all have the ability to do that. We all have the responsibility to do that. It's hard because, I used to be so married to the left. I used to be married to the left. I used to say, I'm so blue, I make the sky look red. And then the left just kind of changed away from my ideals. I mean, certainly separation of church and state, but certainly due process is one of my ideals. Certainly freedom of speech is one of my ideals. Certainly, the free exchange of ideas, criticism, debate, civil discourse. These are my ideals too. Okay, these are my ideals every bit as much as freedom of speech, freedom of religion, or separation of church and state, and choice. These are all my ideals. And I think the reason that I agree with you and can't call myself a leftist anymore is because the left me. The left is gone. And gone away from me, rather. It's not gone, it's just gone away from me. It left me behind. And so yeah, I'm not allied with the left, with the Democrats anymore.
Right.
And I'm certainly not allied with the Republicans.
Yeah. See, I've got beef with the left now because, my background, David, I'm ex-Muslim, and pretty much how the left is now looking at Islam, because they think it's a minority and therefore it should be protected. And they've completely abandoned leftists by definition. We're talking about the Marx and the Lenin and all these ideologies. It's an atheistic sort of ideology by definition, which I disagree with, because you cannot have atheism as an ideology. It needs to be a process. You need to be individually convinced, not as a group. So I've always had problem with that, because it almost then mirrors a religion, but in a different way.
I like that. Good.
Yeah.
I like that.
But the problem was always for me is, once the left protect Islam at the moment, they say the Muslims are minorities, because to the left it's the privileged white man that they're combating with. And anybody else, despite they could be wrong, you could be a horrible black person and you'll stand a chance because you're just a minority. And therefore, they're actually committing the act of racism by basically removing themselves from the actions of the human being and judging it by the color of the skin. So they've done exactly what they are trying to sort of breach against, in a way.
Hanney, I can't agree with you more on everything you just said. And if I look at the atheist movement right now, I am disappointed on many levels in them all. But I think one of the greatest places that I'm disappointed in the atheist movement is their complete abandonment of the ex-Muslims. I think it is repugnant. I think it is disgusting that the atheist movement has said, okay, we're so woke now, we're going to commit the act of racism and say all Muslims are brown. And then we're going to take the side of the brown Muslims against the white people and completely ignore the fact that you can be Muslim and white, completely ignore the fact that ex-Muslims are atheists, and completely ignore the fact that Islam is a shit religion that is misogynist and homophobic and horrible in many, many ways. And then, and so, you know, and this is something that I'm just going to crow about myself, okay? I made a lot of mistakes when I was in the atheist movement. One of the mistakes I did not make was in my unabashed support of the ex-Muslims and my continued support for the ex-Muslims. I mean, I think that every atheist event that doesn't include ex-Muslims is a betrayal of the principles of atheism. I think if you're just saying, okay, we're going to be wokest now, we're just going to get together and be leftist, wokest Trump bashers, and we're going to say, okay, there's this incredibly important, globally important group of atheists that coincidentally is the group that needs our help the most. And we're going to forget about them. It's disgusting. I mean, yeah, I don't want to say it's the worst thing that the atheist movement is doing these days, but it's up there. And I think that everybody who goes to an atheist event must. I think everybody who goes to an atheist event should make sure that they make some noise on this front, because it's not okay. It's not okay. The Council for Ex-Muslims of North America, these are good organizations. They're doing important work. Mariam Namazi is a fucking hero. Okay. And we're ignoring what these heroes are doing. I went to an ex-Muslim convention in London a few years back. And, you know, I've met actual heroes there. Okay. I met people who have acid burns on them. I met people who are missing fingers or loved ones. Okay. These are the fighters. We atheists here in America, we're fighting. Yay, we're going to get on the picket line. We're going to make our noise, and we're going to go on TV and yell, and they're going to yell back. And we're going to make our point. These people are dying in Bangladesh. These people are dying in Pakistan, and they are escaping, and they're coming here. And there is a wealth of ex-Muslims here in America that are feeling so pushed away by their parents, so pushed away by their culture, they feel alone. They feel they're being told they're haram. They're expelled by their everybody, and we're just going to abandon them because Muslims are brown and brown people are good. That's it's always sort of now. I think this is going to link quite nicely to the idea of racism, and let me just with you trying to sort of go a little bit deeper in this area, because this is, I've had a broadcast a few weeks ago where I actually sort of delved deep into the racism and why it's inbuilt in all of us, and we're trying to kind of combat it, because I've linked it to a xenophobia, which is when we were in evolution, we were just cavemen. We kind of naturally did not feel comfortable when we are confronted or we met by other clans or tribes that did not look like us, because most likely that they wanted to attack us and take their women or food or resources. Yeah, it's human nature to want to be people like yourself.
Right, and it helped us survive, just exactly like the rustling of the tree analogy. We are the descendants of coward people who always thought that there's something behind the trees, and which gave rise to faith, and faith helped us for some time. But
Right.
there are times where we grow up and we abandon these things because they're no longer helpful. So, for example, right now we can find for ourselves what's behind the trees, and be informed about our decisions rather than reaching conclusions. And
Right.
same with racism. We no longer need to be afraid of people who don't look like us because the world is smaller. The language has evolved. There's a lingua franca where people, I'm not an Egyptian native speaker, but I'm speaking to you in English now, and we can understand each other perfectly. And therefore, the world has become smaller. So while racism can be a little bit inbuilt, and we're trying to sort of move away from it, obviously enforced by religion. If we're talking about the Torah and the Bible, they're all sort of written by men. Maybe men have reflected their ideologies and separated. You understand. Obviously, the origin of racism, pretty much in the Old Testament, was around the area of Noah. And Noah's son, where he was exposed, his butt was exposed after too many wines. His son, who was supposed to be the son of Ham, who was going to be, all the descendants of the sort of brown and darker people, he cursed him, and therefore, and the Civil War, the North and the South, at some point, they're both holding the Bible and reading it differently, talking about different areas. So do you think now racism, is it any more to do, is it because people are expecting a stereotype? So black people, when you see a black person in an alley, you are uncomfortable immediately because of the things that they are doing. They are, and as you said, there are facts and there are numbers, and facts speak louder than words. It's, if you know that the crime ratio is higher in the black African community, and people will argue it's because of the injustice that's happened to them over the years, they had become that way. So we have contributed to them becoming that way. How do you solve this dilemma?
Well, okay, so there's two kinds of racism for this conversation. There's the racism where I'm raised just to hate black people because black people are bad and they're lesser and they're bad. And then there's the other kind of racism, which is proposed by Coleman Hughes, a very popular African-American speaker and brilliant guy, who says that it's earned, that because of the high rate of crime in the black community, people are afraid. And this is, I've been thinking about this, and I think the key here to this argument is the fact that judges in America, they do give harsher sentences to black people, but that's on an aggregate. If you look at it on a race basis, white judges are even in how they give out their punishments. Black judges are harsher on black people. If you look at cops pulling over people and harassing black people, you get a lot of high numbers because they just use their high numbers. But a major thing of this is there are a lot of black cops, and especially in black neighborhoods, and they're doing it too. And so I reject the idea that the fact that human beings want to be near themselves, near people like themselves, I reject the idea that that's a problem. I reject the idea that that's systemic racism. Yeah, it's racism, but it's not systemic. And I reject the idea that it's a problem. I certainly reject the idea that it's one way. I think if a Jew was walking down the road and he saw a bunch of Jews and a bunch of Christians, he'd go to the Jews. I think if a Christian was walking down the road and he saw a bunch of Jews and a bunch of Christians, he'd go to the Christian. I think if a white person was walking down the road and he saw a bunch of whites, a bunch of blacks, he'd go to the white. If a black person was walking down the road and saw a bunch of whites, a bunch of blacks, they'd pick the black. But wouldn't it be interesting if they picked the white? And sometimes, and sometimes it seems like that happening. So I don't think that's systemic racism. That's just the nature of our country, the nature of our species. And I think using that to say, okay, that's systemic racism, and that's giving these black people this headwind against against them, I think that's horseshit. I think that if you have to try really, really hard to find the bigotry, then the bigotry isn't having a very big effect at all. It's all psychological. It's all in their heads. I think that if we're looking at where this bigotry comes from, I think we have to take Coleman's position seriously, that this is a different kind of bigotry. And I'm not saying it's good, but I'm saying the responsibility changes, because if you're an Archie Bunker, if you're just a bad racist guy, the responsibility to change is on you. But if you're not a racist, and then you essentially become a racist because you see all of this crime coming from the black community, well, there's another side of that then, isn't there? And how much of this is caused? And when you look at black judges and black cops being harder on black criminals, that adds to this equation. That's not me, a white guy, making excuse for other white guys. If I'm seeing a high rate of this kind of discrimination from black people, they're not being raised bigoted against black people. They're being raised as a part of that community, and then they're becoming aware over time that there's this crime issue. And so they're learning this bigotry. So, I mean, I think maybe there's just so much nuance here. There's just so much nuance here. And no matter where you go on it, if you take it even one level deeper, you look for where the responsibility lies.
Yeah.
And the responsibility, you know, I'm a humanist, okay? I have a humanist responsibility. I want everybody in the world to live well and have no suffering and to be prosperous. I want people to be happy. But people aren't going to be happy if we're pretending the problem isn't real.
Agreed.
We're not going to solve these problems by tiptoeing around the issue. Mm-hmm. We're not going to, I mean, participation trophies are great when you're a child. But when you're an adult, you matter less if you do less. And you're less important. You're not special if you don't do shit. And if you are a criminal, you matter less than a child who matters more. And it's humanistic to realize that, because, again, these criminals, they're going to have victims.
Right.
So we have to worry about that. And I got off topic again, and your people are going to be screaming about it. But I think the end of your question, the end result of your question, is that we are seeing people use our innate attraction for people like us as a vehicle to shuttle in the falsehood, the Trojan horse of systemic racism. The fact that a white person would cross the street to the white guys is not systemic racism. Systemic racism is there's a law that affects black people and no other black people, or there's a law that affects some kinds of people that not other kinds of people. Those laws are gone. We don't have those laws anymore. Our American society right now is rife with anti-racism, systemic anti-racism. Every place, every government entity, every corporate entity practically has an anti-racism policy. If you get caught being a racist or doing racist things, you get your ass fired, which is exactly how it should be. This is nationwide systemic anti-racism that is active and working just great. And I think we have to start realizing that there's an equity problem, but that's not that. There's a lot of problems that are leading to the equity problem. Okay, there are a lot of issues that are leading to the equity problem, and most of them have nothing to do with white folk anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's the way it is.
Completely agree, David. It's almost like the matter of black versus white. It's not black and white. You've got to look at the nuances, and two movies actually sort of come to mind to sort of address this area brilliantly. There was a movie called by Edward Norton. I love Edward Norton. American History, where he was a neo-Nazi, gone, sort of killed a black dude, went to jail, cited by, always, when you go to jails, as depicted in American movies, you got the two gangs, the American, so the black ones and the white ones, and you get the Latino ones sometimes. He joins the white ones, end up being horrible to him, and eventually moved to the black one who protected him from being killed by the white guys, and eventually changed his ideas about black people and ended up becoming a normal person. And the other one was Django Unchained by Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
And you've seen Samuel L. Jackson, the keeper of the house, is way worse on the black people than the white people that resided in the house.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So the situation isn't black and white. There's so many 50 shades of gray within.
No, don't get me started on that. But don't get me started on BDSM. And the problem is not that there is nuance. The problem is the wealth of people who are unwilling to accept that there is nuance. The wealth of people who just want to say all whites are racist. They literally say all white people are racist and only white people are racist. And therefore, anti-racism is, of course, anti-white. They want the simplest place. White guy's bad, black guy's good, and they don't care about any of the details. And there's a wealth of people like that. There's a wealth of people who are unwilling to just to stray from the mantra. And so, getting back to what I was saying before, when I was talking about the police and the mantra, what I'm afraid of is what I'm afraid of are these people who won't get rid of the mantra. These people who are in Seattle on the city hall, okay, they're the ones who say all whites are racists and no non-whites are racists, and the system is racist because there's inequity. These are the people, and it's such an ignorant point of view. It's a willfully ignorant point of view. I'm really losing faith in our ability to solve this problem because of the sheer vast number of people who are unwilling to have a conversation about nuance. And they're unwilling to, they look at everything and they see racism. There's inequity, therefore racism. There's crimes, therefore racism. Black crime is up, therefore racism. Black suicide is up, therefore racism. They can't actually go past the participation trophies and say, okay, maybe some cultures are better than others. Maybe some cultures are worse than others. And those cultures that are worse than others would be those cultures that sabotage their own people and send them into a pit from which they can never escape, unless, of course, they escape that culture.
Yeah.
Holy shit. And then they say to us, well, we can't, I'm a white guy, so I can't comment on their culture. Well, if that's the truth, then the only people commenting on that culture are the people who are going to be inside that culture. And the black community is very tight-knit, as we have seen. So they're not changing their culture. And so now it's kind of up to us to talk to our partners, because I believe very strongly that we are all equal partners on this planet. We are all equal citizens in this country, all equal partners on this planet. And that makes it imperative for us to speak to each other as partners.
Right.
That makes it imperative for us to talk to each other as equals.
Yeah.
And if my partners have a problem, I'm a humanist. I'm here to help. It is, however, their problem, not mine. If they have a problem with black crime, black on black crime, and black suicide, I'm here to help. There are 30 black on black criminal, black on black murder is 30 times more of a problem than cops killing blacks. 30 times. And of course, cops killing blacks is almost entirely felons. And black on black is a lot more innocence. So we've got a real problem. And if they're going to say, well, we're not going to pay attention to that problem, and we're not going to pay attention to the number 2 problem, which is black suicide, and we're instead going to go down to the number 6 problem, which is right next to diabetes, and we're going to say, hey, that number 6 problem is our major problem, and it's all your fault, white people. It's time. I mean, it's okay for us to say, hey, partner, that ain't a thing. You got stuff in your culture, and I'm here to help. But it's not my problem that you've got stuff in your culture that's broken. It's not my problem. It's not my fault that black families don't stay together. It's not my fault that the African American culture is anti-education, by and large. It's not my fault that gangs are everywhere, and that there's a apparent support for criminal activity solely in the black community because the African American community, and I want to make it very clear, I'm talking about the African American community, is so tight knit that they can't even shun their shit. And if we're going to help the future generations of underprivileged people, we have to stop pretending that the problem is something that it's not. We have to stop pretending that all the problems that are facing the black community are because of systemic racism, which doesn't really exist anymore. It's about a bunch of things. But if we spend all of our time worrying about systemic racism and not worrying about black on black killing, not worrying about black suicide, what the hell are we doing?
Yeah.
What the hell are we doing?
David, just before we get into the atheism sort of section, last part of the broadcast, I wanted to just to show people as well, if you think outside of the US, we're outside of the US, look like a country like India and well ingrained within theology, Hinduism. You have the caste system that differentiate between almost the same race, same ethnicity. We're Indians. And they obviously do it by province and sometimes by the tone of the skin. The Bollywood industry, which is the equivalent of Hollywood, you'll always see the fair-skinned actors and actresses. It's almost like darker skin tone within India, and they're all both Indians, are deemed to be a bit more superior. That shows you that's outside of black and white racism. I'm Egyptian. So I come from the north area, and you can see I'm a bit fair-skinned. But if you go south on the borders between Egypt and Sudan, you'll find the very dark-skinned Egyptians. And unfortunately, within Egypt, and there are Egyptians speaking the same accent, dialect, language, everything, they are still looked down upon by fair-skinned Egyptians. So the problem is a lot deeper in humanity, and I think it's not about African Americans anymore. This is an ingrained issue that I think only science and common sense eventually will prevail, because if we end up knowing the genes are exactly similar, we evolve the same way, and eventually equal opportunities and people freeing themselves. I mean, I've always put it against something that the African communities in America have always done. You have like Neil deGrasse Tyson. You no longer see a skin. You see the humor, the amount of information and the knowledge. You no longer see any of that. And maybe that's the thing that they need to start doing by being involved in society in a constructive and productive way. And that's the only way to get out of this. Maybe that's it.
I can only speak to African American, to the American culture. I understand that we do have. I mean, I do know. I have been told many stories that even in Nigeria and Uganda, dark-skinned people are treated worse than light-skinned people.
Yeah,
and I've learned that in some cases, I think it was Uganda, that's a pretty drastic difference. That light-skinned people are treated much better than dark-skinned, but I'm no expert there. I do think that, of course, all prejudice is stupid. I abhor all prejudice. I abhor all bigotry. I think I think people are different. I think the races are different. I think we have different attributes. We have different things that we do. And I don't think anyone's better or anyone's worse, but I think we are different. And I think we have to allow that we're different. It's not systemic anti-Semitism that the football leagues are not filled with Jews. Okay. It's not anti-Semitism that there aren't any Jews in football. It's just that, we're better at accounting than throwing a ball. Okay. It's just the way it is. Okay. And that's just the way it is. And if we use the participation trophy and say, oh, no, we're all equal, we're all special, well, then we're not going to solve the problem. Okay. We're different, and we're going to make different choices, and we all have to have equal opportunity, and we all have to have, equal opportunity. But if we make different choices, we make different choices.
Yeah.
I want the bigotry to end, but I think if we are going to really solve the problem, we have to recognize that bigotry actually isn't the problem. I think that's the big kicker. Bigotry is not the problem. White people are not trying to hold down black people. The system doesn't hold down black people at all anymore. Yay, white people my age, by the way. Just going to put the credit out there. Yay, white people, white guys in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. We're the ones who lifted the glass ceiling. We're the ones who fought hard to get rid of all the bigotry that was inherent in the system that we inherited from our fathers. We're the ones who said, nope, women are equal, gays are equal, trans are equal, and of course the racists are equal. We're the ones who did that. So yay us for making this country what it is today and not what it was when we inherited it. Yay us for giving away the power that we were given for the force of good. And I'm going to stand up and say that because I was a part of that, and I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the fact that I used my privilege as a white guy to make it better for everyone else. I did that. And I know a lot of other people who did that. Yeah. And that's why I get really, really angry when somebody comes up to me and says, well, all white people are racist. You're a racist.
Yeah.
No, fuck you.
Yeah. Great. But before we move on, I mean, maybe the subtleties is almost the same difference between male-female sort of debate. Recognizing that we're different, have different functions, and do different things, but equal in rights and responsibilities. That's simple as that. And celebrate life. Maybe if there's a certain race very good with sports, the other is very good with, you need all of that in life anyway. Life does not just favor science and no art whatsoever. You need all these aspects in your life to make it interesting. And all these different people with different attributes contribute to that beautiful world we live in. Why can't we celebrate?
It's a beautiful thing. We're not all the same. We're all equal, but we're not all equal. Yeah. We all have equal rights and equal responsibilities and equal privileges, but we're not equal people.
Yeah. I've always sort of made I've just always made the analogy of going to a shopping mall and you go to the food court, and you could end up in a very, very equal, mundane, black and white world with just the one cuisine. You go to a food court and it's all burgers. But also you can go to a food court where you have 25 choices of cuisine, Thai, Chinese, and Mexican. That's a wonderful world we live in. That's a great thing.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing. And I think I think the leftist mentality now that color blindness is bad, that we have to pay attention to race because of the asinine idea that certain attributes should be overlooked for the race because they've had so much against them. Like, I mean, it's really offensive to me when somebody says that being on time is a white thing or the scientific method is a white thing. Yeah. And I mean, it's disgustingly racist. I mean, I'm thinking of, a racist coming to me. I'm thinking of a Ku Klux Klan man coming to me and saying, hey, you know what? Being on time is a white guy thing. and being thorough is white. Being late is a black guy thing, you know. And this is the stuff that I would expect from racists, but it's coming from the left. It's coming from the African American History Museum. It's insane. It's insane. And it's all, I am convinced this is all about participation trophies. This is all about, we're all equal. We're all special. Nobody fails. And that's horseshit because people fail. I failed. I've succeeded and I failed. And when I fail, it's been my fault entirely. It's not been about systemic anti-Semitism because there's anti-Semites in the system and they're holding me down. And now I have a headwind because people see my name and they say, oh, David Silverman, he's a Jew. I don't like him. Or maybe they do it subconsciously because they don't like Jews. And so there's a headwind against me. And that's the reason that I'm failing.
Yeah.
Horseshit.
Yeah.
Horseshit.
Yeah. And if you ever think that way, David, you're actually holding yourself down. You'll never be anything. You'll
never be anything. You'll never succeed.
Yeah.
And neither will your kids, because you're going to tell your kids that they'll never succeed, and they never will either.
Yeah, completely agree. All right. Now, atheism. This is the section where most people are going to be so thrilled about. Are you still a firebrand atheist, David, or things have changed a little bit? You're still there?
Oh, no. Some things will never change. Okay, religion is shit. Religion deserves to die, all of it. No, that's not going to change because. But the only thing that's changed about it is I believe my definition of religion has changed, and I believe now that wokeism is a religion, and I believe it is also shit and deserves to die.
Yeah, well, it's a dogma. Anything that is a dogma that's going to put you in a room and say you got to think that way because we all think that way, it's obviously by definition going to be wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's actually kind of if you excuse my language, it's a wanky one as well because it's really what it plays on. It plays on defensiveness and insecurities. You know, it's just like it's something for those who feel a little bit disadvantaged, are never going to have the courage or the balls to be anything or say things the way they are. They always have to hide behind, the grayish area. And I've always had a problem with this sort of area. But with atheism, you still think morality is subjective because I've looked at so many videos. You've always maintained morality is a subjective thing. You still there?
So after everything went down, I started writing about humanism, and it's nothing that has been published. Some of it has been published on some websites, but I started thinking about this very concept of objective good and objective bad. In reality, in a literal sense, no, there is no such thing as objective good. There's no such thing as objective bad. There's no such thing as objective morality. The thing that comes to mind is the part of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Did you ever read the Hitchhiker's Guide?
42.
Okay. Yes, 42. So superhighway, the intergalactic superhighway is coming through Earth's orbit. Earth's going to be destroyed. Too bad, but it's going to save 1 billion other Earths, and they're all way better than us. Okay? So if you have that situation, it's moral to kill us. It may be moral to kill us all. So it's never so if you have that kind of situation, there's no such thing as objective morality. Okay. That's where I was for a very long time. And it's still true. However, I don't find that to be a useful position. I find it to be it's a position that is true, but it doesn't give me anything. And so taking a cue from End of Faith, I posited a pseudo-objective good. The idea that reduction of suffering, every living thing on the planet that can perceive pain runs from pain. And they run from it to the degree that they can perceive it. So I have taken the position that the reduction of suffering is an objective good, a pseudo-objective good.
Yes.
It's objective enough to call objective. It's not actually objective, but it's objective enough to call objective. And if you take that leap, then you say, okay, I mean, I use mathematical terms, the limit as h goes to objective, as objective goes to 0. If you take that process and you say, okay, now there's an objective good, the reduction of suffering, we can move on that, we could say the elimination of suffering is a greater good than the reduction of good. And the increase in suffering is a bad thing. The increase in total suffering is a bad thing. So we can make these assumptions. So if we do that, we can come up with a list. We can come up with a morality, an objectively based morality, a pseudo-objectively based morality. And this is the way I'm living my life now.
So do you take the position? I mean, I've talked about free will and consciousness, and I believe there are illusions, but there are good illusions. Is it the same sort of thing? So it's good, it's practical to have what we call objective moral values, even though they're not really, but it's good. It's a good illusion, because otherwise insanity will be all over the place. We just need something.
It's a good illusion because it increases our happiness. Okay,
yeah.
That's what makes it a good illusion. The illusion of free will, if it's an illusion or not, free will argument gives me a headache. But it is, if it's an illusion, it is a good illusion, because it eliminates or it reduces our suffering. To realize that we have some degree of autonomy, and not that we're not mindless automatons at the particle level. In the I don't think that I think that if we take this example and if we move through this example, which I did in the writings, which again are not published, we can see a morality come around which has, I mean, it's the reason that I'm talking about felons matter less. And I'm making this mantra that felons matter less. And that's a humanist mantra, in my opinion. It's a humanist statement, because the objective is not to make the felons feel good. The objective is to reduce suffering. And if we're going to reduce suffering, we're going to do it by saying that felons matter less, so that they can stop being felons, so that we can protect the future victims from suffering. That's the idea. So it's kind of an apt question, because this has been a kind of a change in my mind over the past couple of years, because this firebrand kind of humanism, this is something that I'm just calling firebrand humanism. It's when you say, hey, you know what? Sometimes you could be bad, and sometimes you need to be called on your shit, and sometimes you need to be put in prison and called a complete asshole so that you'll snap out of it and stop being a complete asshole. Sometimes we need to put people in jail and not promote bad guys, because that's how we protect good guys in the future from being hurt.
Right.
I think that's humanism.
Yeah.
I think that's a good humanism. And I think what I'm doing in my mind is I'm quantifying the humanism. I'm quantifying the good. I'm saying, okay, I'm going to do X good by saying, oh, poor felons, you shouldn't be beaten up by cops. But I'm going to do more good by saying, hey, felons, you should stop being fucking felons. You're a piece of shit for being a felon, and you're going to go to jail. And if you get the shit kicked out of you when you go to jail by a cop, I mean, you have rights, but you give up the right for me to care about you very much. And I think that's a completely valid statement. And I think when I'm making that statement, I'm not being vindictive or mean. I'm caring about this guy's future victims. I'm caring about the little girl in the car, the baby in the crib. Those are the people I care about. Those are the lives that matter to me. And I think those are the lives that should matter to all of us. And that's why I think when I'm thinking about this humanism, when I'm thinking about morality, I'm quantifying it. I'm placing a higher literal value on the human life of an innocent than the human life of a guilty.
Yeah, But you know what, David, I've thought about this myself, and I have a slight issue with this analogy or with this situation.
Yeah.
My issue is as follows, and it's sort of depicted by art in the last 20 years. I'm watching a series now called The Boys. It's on Amazon, and it shows superheroes who are dark and bad. And in the last 10 years in cinema, it seems to be the absolute hero and the absolute villain is gone. We're looking at, for example, the new Batman and the Joker. They showed you how this person has become bad. There is a snapshot where all of us can be a felon, and if you freeze frame at that point, most of us will be condemned. But then that person otherwise is actually all right, and we all. I've had lapses in my life, and I'm sure you had the same. And you'd like to be not judged based on that, because you know deep down you can do better. You want to do better, and you want to improve. I'm just afraid. I'm just afraid that we're gonna do that to people, that we're gonna freeze the frame on them on that point. They might have moved on.
And this is a really great point, Hanney, because I am not supporting a non-redemption situation. I'm not supporting a once a felon, always a felon type of situation. I'm not saying that because you're absolutely correct. I have made some bad mistakes, and I would certainly not like to be judged on those mistakes and only those mistakes for the rest of my life. I've done lots of good things too, and I'm doing good things too now, and I'm not making those same mistakes anymore. I want that redemption, and I think everybody is entitled to that redemption. However, if I go out again now and do it again, something bad, whatever I was going to do, if I go out, if I have a girlfriend, if I cheat on her again and do that whole thing again, and I get thrown out of something again and hurt again, didn't I bring it on myself? Am I going to blame if I cheat on my girlfriend and she gets mad at me, am I going to blame her for getting mad at me? Or am I going to blame myself for making the same goddamn mistake 2, 3, 4, or 30 times? Okay? If I am not talking about something that's permanent. I'm talking about if you're committing a crime, I care less about you. And if you get the shit kicked out of you while you're committing a crime, I care less. I just do. And we all should. And if you go to prison and you straighten yourself up and you come back out and you live a life, rock on for yourself. And I'm on your side. And we're all equal partners here. But if you're a continued criminal, if you get out of jail and commit a crime another 30 times,
right?
I don't give a fuck. And we should not give a fuck. I give this much of a fuck. I don't want to say I give no fucks, but I give this much of a fuck. Because somebody who's hurting somebody who's committing crime after crime after crime, forfeits their right for me to give a shit about them.
So, David, if I understood you right, and I think I agree with you, you want the experience as the felon or the crimes being committed to be coercive enough for that person, for the good of the potential future victims, and even the person who's committing the felony at that point, to be coercive enough for them to know that I should not do this again. They should be stung in a way that they go, I don't want to feel like that again.
Yeah. And if they get the shit kicked out of them by a cop in the act of it, they shouldn't meet the vice presidential candidate. They shouldn't have their mural put up on a wall. They shouldn't be heroized. They shouldn't be. And I think it's a major problem that we have in our country, that we're canonizing our villains and that we're canonizing our villains. I mean, the idiocy of canonizing our villains, the idiocy of taking a 5 times criminal or a 30-time criminal and leveling them up and putting them up on the wall to show to our kids the idiocy of that image, the idiocy of look at how persecuted we are, and look at this hero who was a drug dealer, who was on meth and fentanyl, and this guy that we're putting on the wall, he's a hero. He's a victim. Think of how we are affecting our children. Think of how that affects our community. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think that's I think it's a very reasonable position to be. So with the atheism situation, I mean, I know you've been involved at a very high level in the last 15 or 20 years, had a very high positions in a couple of associations. Now you see yourself more of a freelance. You want to stay free, away from organizations and disciplines of all sorts, and you want to be yourself.
You know what? So here's where I sound a little pompous, okay? I have an energy that it comes around me. People like my energy. And when I was running both those organizations, the energy that I brought to the table went with those organizations. And with that energy came the target. And it made both those organizations targets because of my shtick, my storm, my energy, whatever you want to call it, me. And now that I'm free of that, and there was, I mean, when Rebecca Vitzman made that horrible false allegation against me, it really hurt Atheist Alliance International. And she just lied. Okay. They just lied. And it's at the point where people are just making shit up in order to hurt me. And that's awful. It's terrible. But Hanney, I can handle that. I can handle that. I can handle all that shit. I have a bulletproof vest in my office because I actually had death threats against me. I'm okay with people throwing rocks at my life. I'm not okay with people throwing rocks at the organizations. I'm not okay with somebody just lying just to take down an organization just because I'm in it. It's crazy, but it is true. It's literally happened. I don't want it. I'll take my own target. My own target. If you hate me and you think I'm a bad person, you're wrong. But also, I have nothing to lose now. I have nothing to lose. I have no organization. No organization is going to be hurt by me. No organization, rather, is going to be hurt by you or them. And I am free to talk about what I want. And I don't have a staff to betray me. And I don't have a board of amateurs to fuck with me. And I'm in my apartment. I've got my place now. And I think I'm all right. I think I'm all right being independent.
Do you feel liberated, David? Do you feel liberated?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many. I mean, especially when you're dealing with, the old stuff at American Atheist. There was just so much bullshit there, so much politics in the board and in the staff. It's just. I mean, it's just ridiculous what's there. It's ridiculous, the politics, the backbiting, the fucking kindergarten shit that goes on behind closed doors at American Atheists. Yeah. Not so much at Atheist Alliance International. But still, I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to hurt them, and I will restate that. I didn't hurt the movement. The people who hate me hurt the movement. And they lie and they steal and they cheat. And they hurt the movement in order to virtue signal.
Yeah.
But I am free from all that shit now.
Yeah. But even if they start to hurt you and try to hurt the organization, it should not be at all a reason to use against atheism. So no matter what you and I will ever do, that has no bearings whatsoever on the truth claim of the existence of God, right?
Correct. Of course.
Yeah, a lot of religious people now.
You can be an atheist and a wonderful person like us, or you can be an atheist and a horrible asshole like certain people who come to mind.
Yeah. So
same can be said for Christianity and Jews and Muslims and Hindus, and
because people will conflate. Yeah, people will start conflating, and they say, "Oh, look at how David has acted," or "Look at what Hanney did in the past." That has nothing to do.
There is no serious person who's going to say, "Oh, I was going to be an atheist, but then I saw Dave Silverman, and now I went back to Jesus." There's no person in the world who really does that. People who say that, they don't really do that.
So, well, David, maybe you can share with the listeners and watchers, why are you convinced that there is no God?
I'm convinced that there are no gods, because the amount of evidence for any god ever presented is equal to every other god, and it's equal to the god that I can invent in my brain. In my book, Fighting God, I invented a religion. I called it Silvermanity. And it has a god, me. It has a hell, which I invented, which is worse than the Christian hell. Because if you go to the Silvermanity hell, you take all of your ancestors with you. So if they went to heaven and you do bad, you go to Silvermanity hell and you take all your ancestors with you. So that's worse than the Christian hell. And so I put that in there just to win Pascal's wager. You know, you better take the worst. You can create a religion and make the exact same truth claims right out of the top of your head. This is a glass of wine. I poured it myself. However, you can't prove that this glass of wine isn't actually God pretending to be a glass of wine. You can smash it, you can drink it, you can fill it up, but it could be all just God pretending just to test you. Can't prove it's not true.
Yeah.
That's exactly the same. Even if I say, I just made this up, you can't prove that this glass of wine is not God. You can't.
Yeah.
Even if I say, I just made it up, you can't prove it's not. And that's what religion is.
Yeah.
That's what all religion is. And there is no exception to that rule.
You reckon religion is very akin to Russell's teapot that orbits Jupiter? It's unfalsifiable position, basically. They give you a proposition that you can never falsify, and therefore it is just impossible.
This is Russell's teapot.
Yeah.
You can't prove it's not true.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't prove it's not true. And that's why. And that's why and just to make sure that your listeners understand, the number of supernatural incidences worldwide in the history of the world is 0. There are 0 psychics, there are 0 ghosts, there are 0 gods, there are 0 anything like that. 0 supernatural.
Yeah.
And none of you will be able to prove me wrong. 0 people will prove me wrong. Every single Ghost Hunter episode is a scam. Every single psychic is a scam. Every single religion is a scam. There are no exceptions.
Yeah.
And that's why you can prove that there is no God, because you can prove that there's no God simply by proving how gods are created and destroyed simply by thought, human thought.
Right. And if there is, they can be $1 million richer by getting the James Randi claim that's been going for almost quarter of a century now.
Yeah. So my psychic powers, my very, very psychic powers tell me that $1 million prize will never be claimed.
Yeah. It just what's so funny about it that the value is diminishing by the minute. You know, $1 million was something 25 years ago. It's becoming very little at the moment. But David, I don't want to intrude on your sort of time today. You're okay for another 10 minutes or so?
10 minutes is fine, yeah.
10 minutes.
Sure.
Fantastic. So I've watched your conversation or debate with Dinesh D'Souza, where obviously he's committed every single textbook, sort of trying to hide by claiming, scientists were religious at the time, and you what did you think reflecting back?
He's a slippery man. He is an artist in his own way. He is a con man in his own way.
Yeah.
I think he has an agenda, right? He's got an agenda to prove, and he's got an agenda to do. I enjoyed that debate. Okay. Yeah. I enjoyed it. It was fiery. It was there was a lot of good back and forth. And I don't have a lot of high opinion for Dinesh D'Souza. I think he's a liar. I think he's a willful liar. And I think there were a couple places in that debate where he just fibbed. He just made some shit up. Like when he said, "Oh well, the scientists are Christian, therefore science is Christian, science is real, or Jesus is real." It's ridiculous when he says stuff like that. And that's why I call him slippery. And it's important for us to watch for straw man arguments like that. To watch for, oh, this person, Francis Crick is a theist. He's a genius, and he's the guy who disassembled the DNA, and he's a genius, but he still thinks of a creator God. That is the argument from authority. And that is not proof of a creator God. And that's what he was going for in that a lot. And, I try to see the good in a lot of people, and I don't think that Dinesh D'Souza is an evil man. I think he lied. I think he does lie, but, sometimes I lie too. Sometimes we all do. Yeah. I try not to judge him, but I know that he's still doing debates. I know he did one with Dillahunty a little while ago. I don't think they sold any seats, though. I think if Dinesh wants to do another debate, maybe about other issues, we could sell a lot more seats.
Do you think, David, then he's very similar to Trump in a way that he could be possibly actually irreligious at core, but religion is a lucrative business, as you know, in the US. And if you side, you could know zilch about the Bible. Like I believe Trump does not know anything about religion, but he knows that the voters would like to hear, because as you know, being an atheist American president, that's probably very low on the list. We've had a black American president. I think next is woman, maybe a homosexual at some point, and I think atheist president might be the very last in this sort of list. So do you think there are people who are actually at core not religious, but this is the flavor of the day? You got to work with it.
October of 2011, I had dinner with Christopher Hitchens. It was the only time I met him. I sat at the table with him all dinner long, had nice conversations with him. Great guy. One of the things that I said in that conversation was that I had this upcoming debate with Dinesh D'Souza. And I asked Hitchens if he had any words of advice. And he told me what you just said, that Dinesh D'Souza is in this for the money, that he doesn't believe what he's saying, and that he's doing this for the props. Hitchens told me to watch for the dishonesty that comes from Dinesh D'Souza because he doesn't believe his words. So, yeah, I think you're right. Hitchens is right.
Yeah. And it's very easy to find a liar by us rephrasing the same question in 3 different ways, and you end up with 3 different answers, but it's the same question. This is fantastic, David. I'm so thrilled, and I hope that we become sort of friends over time, and maybe have multiple conversation. But maybe today was more of an introduction, and I love talking to you because it's so easy, so natural, no pretense. Even when you don't know, you go, like, I'm actually undecided in this area, just like your vote. And that is a very respectable position to be. When you actually not quite sure, just say, actually, I am not sure. And I'd like more information in place before I make any decisions. And I love that stance. It's very honorable stance to have.
Thank you, Hanney. I had a really good time. It was a good conversation. And yeah, I'd like to do it again. I would like to, just before I get off, I would like to say that my station on YouTube is Firebrand for Good. Yes. I really could use the subscribers. I really could use the shares. And I have a PayPal and a Subscribe Star to help me survive this wonderful period of time that we're going through. Hanney, I want to thank you very much for having me on and inviting me on. I love the discussion. And let's definitely do it again. I would love to.
Thank you so much. Next time is going to be probably we'll pick a topic so we can actually sort of zone in and go deeper into one topic. I've already shared David's channel in the bottom of this broadcast. Is going to be there. I will chat to you, David, later on. Maybe in a few weeks we'll have something. Maybe we'll pick some of the areas that you're very, very fond of. And I really like to thank you and wish you a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Hanney, and to you as well. And goodbye, everybody who's watching. Thanks a bunch for watching. Take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys, and hopefully see you soon in one of our shows. Okay. Bye-bye.